The sterile white corridors of the Galactic Council Station stretched like an endless maze of clinical perfection. Emily Rodriguez moved with the nervous energy of a teenager thrust into an impossible situation, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly off, creating a subtle disorientation that matched her inner turbulence. She had been selected from thousands of applicants for the Interstellar Youth Diplomacy Program, a groundbreaking initiative designed to bridge the vast cultural gaps between Earth and the numerous alien civilizations that populated the known galaxy. At 17, Emily was not just a diplomat in training. She was a prodigy whose neural interface technologies had already caught the attention of multiple alien research teams. The corridor opened into a massive circular chamber, its walls a holographic kaleidoscope of shifting alien languages and diplomatic insignias. Representatives from over 30 different species occupied the surrounding platforms, their forms ranging from crystalline humanoids to gaseous entities contained in sophisticated environmental suits. Emily's translator chip hummed softly, processing multiple linguistic streams simultaneously. Her presentation today was supposed to be simple, a demonstration of human neural interface technology that could potentially revolutionize interspecies communication. A small device, no larger than a coin, rested in her palm, the culmination of years of research by her parents and their colleagues. It represented humanity's most sophisticated attempt to create true empathetic communication across species boundaries. As she approached the central podium, Emily noticed the tension in the chamber. Alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably, their various appendages and sensory organs displaying micro-expressions of suspicion and barely contained hostility. The Galactic Council had never fully trusted humanity, viewing their rapid technological advancements with a mixture of fear and resentment. The head moderator, a six-limbed crystalline being from the Vortex Confederacy, gestured for her to begin. Emily took a deep breath, activating the neural interface with a subtle neural command. Holographic projections began to materialize around her, showing intricate pathways of thought, emotion, and communication that transcended traditional linguistic barriers. What happened next occurred in a series of moments so rapid they would be debated for generations. A flicker of data, something unexpected, caught the attention of the council members. The neural interface was revealing more than Emily intended. Classified information, deep-seated political machinations, hidden diplomatic tensions began to leak through the holographic display. Secrets that powerful entities had kept carefully concealed were suddenly floating in the open, visible to every representative in the chamber. The crystalline moderator's form shifted from translucent blue to a violent shade of crimson. Diplomatic protocols shattered in an instant. "Terminate the interface," a voice screamed in multiple translated languages. Emily's hands moved to disconnect the device, but it was too late. The neural link had already exposed too much. In that moment of vulnerability, she understood the gravity of what was happening. This was no longer a diplomatic demonstration. This was an execution. An energy weapon materialized in the moderator's upper limb. Emily didn't even have time to be afraid. The blast was precise, instantaneous, a single point of coherent energy that burned through her neural interface and stopped her heart before she could even register the pain. Her body crumpled to the floor, the small neural device still flickering with fragments of impossible information. Around her, the chamber fell into absolute silence. The holographic projections continued to dance, revealing glimpses of secrets that would never be fully understood. Outside the station, the vast emptiness of space continued its indifferent rotation, unaware that a single moment had just changed the course of galactic history. The transmission arrived at 300 hours, a compressed data burst that would have been invisible to any conventional communication system. Jack Rodriguez sat in his private research compound, a fortified facility nestled deep within the Atacama Desert, when the message from the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps materialized on his primary quantum interface. His daughter was dead. Most fathers would have collapsed, would have broken under the weight of such devastating news. Jack Rodriguez was not most fathers. a former special operations commander turned quantum systems engineer. He had spent decades preparing for scenarios that most humans couldn't even comprehend. The muscles around his eyes tightened, the only outward sign of the volcanic rage building within him. The official report was a masterpiece of bureaucratic obfuscation. Diplomatic incident, unforeseen technological complications, regrettable miscommunication. Each carefully crafted phrase was a knife twist, designed to minimize the brutal execution of a 17-year-old diplomatic prodigy. But Jack saw beyond the words. His fingers danced across quantum-encrypted interfaces, triggering networks that had been decades in preparation. Underground communication channels, developed during his military days, but never officially acknowledged, began to pulse with activity. These were not simple communication lines. They were living, adaptive networks that could reconfigure themselves faster than any known tracking system could detect. In Tokyo, a former military cryptographer named Keiko Tanaka received the first coded transmission. Her fingers, augmented with neural interfaces that blurred the line between human and machine, began decrypting layers of information that would make most intelligence agencies weep. She understood it immediately. This was not just a message. This was a call to arms. Across the globe, a network of operatives, some in government positions, some in private research facilities, some living completely off-grid, began to move. They were not a traditional military. They were something far more dangerous. A distributed intelligence network with access to humanity's most advanced technological and strategic resources. Jack's primary research facility, a complex that appeared to be nothing more than a standard geological research station, hummed to life. Quantum processors that had been dormant for years began to interface with experimental biomechanical systems. These were not mere weapons. They were adaptive intelligences, created to understand and neutralize threats in ways traditional military strategy could never comprehend. The Galactic Council had made a critical mistake. They had treated Emily's death as a simple elimination, a way to suppress potential technological revelations. They did not understand the complex web of human connections, the intricate networks of trust and capability that ran deeper than any alien civilization could imagine. Within hours, Jack had compiled a comprehensive dossier on the council members responsible for Emily's execution, not just their public personas, but their deepest vulnerabilities, their secret communications, their hidden biological weaknesses. Each piece of information was a potential weapon, carefully cataloged and prepared. Keiko's network began to infiltrate alien communication systems, not to destroy, but to understand, to map, to prepare for a response that would be remembered across generations. Quantum encrypted viruses began to seed themselves in seemingly innocuous data streams, creating pathways that could be activated at a moment's notice. The whispers began to spread, not through traditional media, not through official channels, but through the intricate network of human connections that spanned the globe and reached beyond Earth's atmosphere. Emily Rodriguez was more than a victim. She was becoming a symbol. In research facilities, military compounds, and private research stations around the world, a singular message began to circulate. It was not a declaration of war. It was something far more terrifying. Preparation. Jack Rodriguez looked at the holographic image of his daughter, her last diplomatic briefing, her eyes bright with hope and intelligence. The rage that had been building now crystallized into something far more dangerous, a methodical, cold determination. The Galactic Council had made a fundamental error. They had turned a diplomatic incident into a potential extinction-level threat. Humanity was going to make them understand the true meaning of consequences. Deep beneath the Atacama Desert, a mechanism older than most living humans began to stir. The Primeval Protocol was not a weapon. It was a living, breathing contingency, a last resort system developed in the darkest days of humanity's early interstellar explorations. Jack Rodriguez stood at the central interface, his hand hovering over a quantum-encrypted activation panel that most believed was nothing more than an urban legend. Generations of preparation had led to this moment. The facility itself was a marvel of human engineering and paranoia. Carved into solid bedrock, its walls were composed of metamaterials that could shift molecular structure faster than any known scanning technology could track. Each corridor was a labyrinth of adaptive defense mechanisms, capable of reconfiguring themselves in microseconds. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Jack's wife and Emily's mother, had been one of the primary architects of the Primeval Protocol. A brilliant xenobiological researcher, she had understood something that most of humanity's diplomatic corps had consistently underestimated. The galaxy was not a place of peaceful coexistence, but a complex ecosystem of predatory civilizations. Initiating primary sequence, Jack murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The first system to activate was the quantum processing core. It wasn't a computer in any traditional sense. Grown from a combination of artificial neural networks and bioengineered organic processors, it was more akin to a living brain than a machine. Thousands of interconnected nodes began to pulse with an ethereal blue light, each one representing decades of accumulated strategic knowledge. Surrounding the processing core, massive storage chambers began to unseal. These were not conventional weapon storage units. Each chamber contained carefully cultivated biomechanical entities, living weapons that defied conventional understanding of military technology. They were not machines built for war. They were evolved systems, capable of adapting to threats in real time with a complexity that would make most alien civilizations weep. Elena's research had discovered something profound about interstellar conflict. Most civilizations developed weapons based on static technological principles. Humanity's approach was fundamentally different. These biomechanical entities were more like ecological systems, capable of evolving, adapting, and responding to threats with an almost sentient intelligence. The first wave of biomechanical units began to interface with the quantum processing core. They were not simply receiving instructions. They were engaging in a complex dialogue, analyzing potential strategic scenarios at speeds that would make traditional supercomputers look like abacuses. Jack watched as holographic projections began to map potential conflict scenarios. Each projection was a living, breathing simulation, not just of potential military engagements, but of entire sociopolitical ecosystems. The Primeval Protocol was not preparing for a simple act of revenge. It was preparing to fundamentally reshape galactic power dynamics. Initialization at 67%, a synthetic voice reported. The voice wasn't computer-generated. It was a carefully cultivated linguistic construct designed to be both precise and subtly unsettling. Deep within the facility, additional systems began to activate. Quantum communication arrays that could transmit information faster than light. Adaptive camouflage systems that could render entire fleets invisible. Biological interface technologies that could turn entire planetary ecosystems into potential weapons. This was humanity's true strength, not just technological innovation, but the ability to see conflict as a complex, adaptive system, rather than a series of linear engagements. Elena's research notes, accessed through the quantum core, revealed the true genius of the Primeval Protocol. It wasn't just a weapon system. It was a comprehensive reset mechanism for galactic civilization. Every potential scenario had been analyzed, every potential counter-strategy mapped and prepared for. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had viewed humanity as another species to be controlled, another civilization to be managed. They did not understand that humanity was something far more dangerous, a potential apex predator in the galactic ecosystem. Jack's hand remained on the activation panel, his eyes reflecting the pulsing blue light of the quantum processors. The Primeval Protocol was no longer just a contingency. It was becoming a promise. The first wave emerged from quantum tunnels that should have been impossible. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear, revealing ships that defied every known principle of interstellar engineering. They were not vessels in any traditional sense. They were living systems, organic mechanical hybrids that breathed and thought as much as they flew. Each craft was a perfect fusion of biological adaptation and quantum computational power, capable of analyzing and responding to threats faster than most species could comprehend a single tactical decision. Commander Karen Williams stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, her neural interface humming with a symphony of computational possibilities. Around her, the ship's internal structure pulsed and shifted, organic circuits rerouting themselves in milliseconds, anticipating potential threats before they could even materialize. The Galactic Council's early warning systems never stood a chance. These were not ships designed for conventional warfare. They were ecological weapons capable of adapting to any environment, any threat, with a complexity that bordered on evolutionary intelligence. Where traditional military vessels would calculate response times in seconds, these human craft were making millions of strategic calculations between heartbeats. The first engagement occurred near the Proxima Centauri defense grid, a network of space stations that the Galactic Council had considered impenetrable. Automated defense systems activated, launching a barrage of quantum-locked missiles that would have obliterated any known spacecraft. The human vessels didn't dodge, they consumed. Each incoming missile was met not with evasion, but with a form of technological absorption that defied every known law of physics. Quantum entanglement fields surrounded the projectiles, breaking them down into base components that were immediately integrated into the ship's adaptive systems. What should have been a devastating attack became nothing more than additional fuel for humanity's technological arsenal. Adaptive integration at 98%, a synthetic voice reported through Karen's neural interface. It wasn't a computer speaking. It was the collective intelligence of the ship itself, a living computational matrix that saw conflict as a form of evolutionary pressure. Alien communication networks began to collapse almost immediately. The human vessels weren't just destroying communication infrastructure, they were rewriting it. Quantum encrypted viruses spread through defense systems like a neural infection, transforming defensive networks into adaptive pathways that served human strategic objectives. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the primary command center back on Earth, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that mapped the unfolding conflict in real time. This was more than a military engagement. It was a fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. Each human vessel carried within it a comprehensive ecological warfare system. They could transform entire planetary environments, redirect stellar energy, and manipulate quantum fields with a precision that made traditional weapons look like primitive clubs. The ships didn't just fight. They evolved, learning from every interaction, every moment of conflict. The Galactic Council's member species began to realize something terrifying. Humanity wasn't just another civilization to be managed or controlled. They were a fundamental force of nature, an adaptive intelligence that saw conflict as a form of complex problem-solving. Entire defense networks began to fall, not through brute force, but through a form of technological assimilation that was almost biological in its complexity. The human vessels moved through space like living predators, consuming and transforming everything in their path. Karen Williams watched as the first major defense hub collapsed. It didn't explode. It was absorbed, its entire technological infrastructure converted and integrated into the human network. What had been a massive weapon of alien civilization became nothing more than another node in humanity's expanding technological ecosystem. Primary objective achieved, the ship's intelligence reported. But Karen knew this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had turned humanity from a diplomatic potential into a force of galactic recalibration. And they were only getting started. The most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal was not a physical construct. It was Karen Williams, a psychological warfare strategist whose reputation had been carefully cultivated in the shadows of diplomatic circles. Karen understood something fundamental about interstellar conflict that most military minds missed entirely. War was not about destruction. It was about narrative. From a secure communications hub deep within the Earth's most protected research facility, she began to deconstruct the Galactic Council's entire psychological infrastructure. Her team was not composed of traditional military strategists. They were linguists, cultural anthropologists, quantum communication experts, and neural interface designers who saw conflict as a complex ecosystem of information and perception. The first wave of psychological assault began with Emily Rodriguez's story. Every communication channel, every quantum encrypted network, every potential information pathway became a conduit for a carefully crafted narrative. It wasn't propaganda. It was something far more dangerous, a complete, unfiltered exposure of the truth, packaged in a way that would penetrate the most complex alien psychological defenses. Holographic reconstructions began to materialize across multiple species' communication networks. They showed Emily's final moments with a level of emotional and contextual detail that bypassed traditional information filters. Each projection was a quantum-entangled memory fragment, designed to trigger specific emotional responses across different alien neurological systems. The Galactic Council's member species began to fracture from within. What made the psychological warfare so devastating was its multilayered approach. It wasn't just about presenting information. It was about creating a comprehensive narrative ecosystem that could penetrate the most complex alien cognitive defenses. Each communication was a living, adaptive system that could modify itself based on the psychological response of its recipients. Dr. Marcus Chen, the lead neural interface designer, had spent decades developing communication technologies that could transcend traditional linguistic barriers. The systems they had created were not simple translation devices. They were empathy engines, capable of transmitting not just words, but the full emotional and contextual complexity of human experience. Alien civilizations began to experience collective psychological breakdown. Their communication networks, once considered impenetrable, became conduits for a narrative that challenged their entire understanding of galactic power dynamics. The story of Emily Rodriguez was not just a personal tragedy. It became a fundamental challenge to the Galactic Council's entire system of governance. Karen watched as the psychological assault spread. Quantum-encrypted emotional resonance fields began to destabilize entire planetary communication systems. It wasn't about destroying infrastructure. It was about creating a fundamental shift in collective consciousness. The most advanced alien psychological defense systems began to collapse, not through brute force, but through a form of narrative infection that was almost biological in its complexity. Each communication pathway became a living system that could adapt, modify, and transform based on the psychological responses it generated. Primary psychological destabilization protocol at 87%. A synthetic voice reported through Karen's neural interface. Entire alien civilizations began to question their fundamental understanding of power, diplomacy, and interstellar relations. The narrative they had constructed about humanity, a young, somewhat naive species to be managed and controlled, was systematically dismantled. Jack Rodriguez watched from the primary command center, his eyes reflecting the complex holographic displays that mapped the psychological assault. This was more than revenge. This was a fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had transformed a diplomatic incident into a catalyst for a complete reimagining of interstellar civilization. And humanity was just getting started. The technology consumed everything. Dr. Jack Rodriguez watched from the primary research complex as humanity's most advanced systems began to rewrite the fundamental rules of technological engagement. What the Galactic Council saw as an attack was something far more complex, a living, breathing ecological transformation of technological infrastructure. Each human vessel was more than a weapon. It was an evolutionary algorithm made manifest. The first major breakthrough came when the adaptive systems began to interface with alien technological networks. These were not simple hacking attempts. The human systems literally consumed and repurposed entire technological ecosystems, breaking them down to their most fundamental components and reconstructing them with a level of efficiency that defied every known principle of engineering. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the primary interface, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that mapped the technological consumption in real time. She had always understood something that most military strategists missed. Technology was not a static tool, but a living, evolving ecosystem. Alien defense networks began to collapse in ways that seemed almost organic. Where traditional military engagements would focus on destruction, humanity's approach was far more insidious. They didn't just destroy technological systems, they transformed them, repurposing entire communication infrastructures, energy distribution networks, and defensive capabilities. The quantum processors at the heart of the human adaptive systems were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They didn't just calculate. They learned. They evolved. Each interaction, each moment of conflict became an opportunity for fundamental technological redesign. Karen Williams watched from the Advanced Command Center as entire planetary defense systems were systematically transformed. It wasn't about winning a war. It was about fundamentally reshaping the technological ecosystem of the galaxy. The most terrifying aspect was the speed of adaptation. Where most civilizations would take decades to develop a single technological breakthrough, the human systems were making millions of strategic and technological modifications in microseconds. Entire defense networks were being dismantled and reconstructed faster than most species could comprehend a single strategic decision. Alien technological experts began to realize the true horror of humanity's approach. These were not simply advanced weapons. They were a form of technological predation that saw conflict as an evolutionary pressure, a chance to grow, to adapt, to fundamentally redesign entire technological ecosystems. Each human vessel carried within it a comprehensive adaptive system that could transform entire planetary infrastructures. They could redirect energy flows, modify quantum communication networks, and restructure entire technological ecosystems with a precision that made traditional engineering look like primitive sketching. Adaptive integration reaching critical mass, the synthetic intelligence reported through the primary command interface. The Galactic Council's most advanced technological systems began to fall, not through brute force, but through a form of technological assimilation that was almost biological in its complexity. The human systems moved through technological networks like a living organism, consuming, transforming, redesigning. Jack Rodriguez understood the fundamental principle that made this possible. Humanity had never seen technology as a tool to be wielded. They saw it as a living, breathing ecosystem, something that could be cultivated, grown, transformed. Entire planetary defense networks were being transformed into adaptive systems that served humanity's strategic objectives. What had been complex technological infrastructures became nothing more than additional nodes in an expanding technological network. The first major technological hub fell not with an explosion, but with a subtle, almost imperceptible transformation. Its entire infrastructure was consumed, broken down, and reconstructed with a level of efficiency that defied traditional understanding of engineering and conflict. Karen Williams watched the holographic displays, a subtle smile crossing her face. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had turned humanity from a potential diplomatic partner into a force of galactic technological recalibration. And they were only beginning to understand the true depth of their error. The last sanctuary of the Galactic Council hung suspended in the void of space, a massive construct that had once represented the pinnacle of interstellar governance. Now it was nothing more than a fragile shell awaiting its final moment of reckoning. Jack Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the primary command vessel, his neural interface humming with the collective intelligence of humanity's most advanced technological system. Around him, the ship's internal structure pulsed with a living, breathing complexity that defied traditional understanding of military technology. Final approach initiated, the ship's synthetic intelligence reported. The remaining council members huddled in their central chamber, their various alien physiologies pressed together in a desperate attempt at collective survival. They had seen entire civilizations fall. They had manipulated galactic politics for millennia. But nothing had prepared them for humanity's approach to conflict. Karen Williams' psychological warfare had already decimated their internal structures. The technological adaptive systems had consumed their defensive networks. Now, Jack Rodriguez would deliver the final devastating blow. The command vessel didn't approach like a traditional warship. It moved with a fluidity that suggested sentience, adapting to the quantum fluctuations of space itself. Each movement was a complex mathematical equation solved in milliseconds, a dance of technological possibility that made traditional space navigation look like primitive crawling. Initiating comprehensive system integration, Jack murmured. What happened next was not an attack in any conventional sense. The human vessel began to interface with the Council's primary infrastructure. But this was no simple technological invasion. It was a complete systemic transformation that would rewrite the fundamental governance structures of the entire galactic civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the operation from the primary research complex on Earth. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces that mapped the complex quantum interactions happening light years away. This was more than a military engagement. It was a fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. The Council's defensive systems activated, quantum shields, energy dispersal networks, adaptive camouflage technologies that had protected them for generations. They should have been impenetrable. They lasted less than 3 milliseconds. The human vessel didn't destroy these systems. It consumed them. Entire technological infrastructures were broken down to their most fundamental components, analyzed, and then reconstructed into something entirely new. What had been complex defensive networks became nothing more than additional nodes in humanity's expanding technological ecosystem. Primary governance systems compromised, the synthetic intelligence reported. Inside the council chamber, the remaining leaders watched in horror. These were beings who had controlled galactic politics for thousands of years. They had manipulated civilizations, started and ended conflicts with a mere communication. Now they were witnessing their own fundamental irrelevance. Jack Rodriguez understood the true nature of their defeat. This wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. The human technological systems began to interface with the Council's communication networks, their administrative infrastructures, their very mechanisms of governance. But instead of simply taking control, they were fundamentally redesigning these systems into something more transparent, more adaptable, more fundamentally just. Comprehensive system redesign at 94%, the synthetic intelligence reported. The final moment came not with an explosion, but with a subtle quantum shift. The entire Council infrastructure was transformed, its fundamental systems redesigned to prioritize individual rights, transparent governance, and genuine interspecies cooperation. Karen Williams watched the holographic displays, her neural interface processing millions of potential scenarios in each heartbeat. This was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental reimagining of galactic civilization. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had turned humanity from a potential diplomatic partner into a force of galactic recalibration. And they were about to learn the full consequences of that error. The transformation was not what anyone had expected. In the weeks following the comprehensive restructuring of galactic governance, a new system emerged, not through conquest, but through a fundamental reimagining of interstellar cooperation. Jack Rodriguez stood at the center of the newly established Interstellar Collaborative Hub, watching as representatives from hundreds of different species gathered to witness a radical new approach to galactic diplomacy. Emily Rodriguez's memorial stood at the heart of the facility, not as a statue, but as a living, interactive quantum memorial that told her story. Her image shifted and changed, displaying moments from her life, her diplomatic work, and the circumstances of her death. It was a constant reminder of the cost of diplomatic failure and the potential for genuine understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been instrumental in designing the new governance model. It was not a system of control, but a dynamic, adaptive framework that prioritized individual rights, transparent communication, and genuine cultural exchange. Each species would have a voice, but no single civilization could dominate the others. The technological systems that humanity had developed during their campaign of transformation now served a different purpose. They were adaptive communication networks that could bridge linguistic, cultural, and biological differences in ways never before imagined. Where traditional diplomatic channels had failed, these new systems created genuine understanding. Karen Williams led the development of the new communication protocols. Her expertise in psychological warfare had transformed into a sophisticated approach to interspecies dialogue. The systems she designed could translate not just words, but emotional contexts, cultural nuances, and complex philosophical concepts. The memorial is more than a remembrance, Jack explained to the gathered representatives. It's a living testament to the potential of genuine communication. The quantum memorial of Emily began to project her final diplomatic presentation, the one that had led to her execution. But now it was contextualized. The holographic display showed not just her actions, but the complex web of misunderstandings, fears, and political manipulations that had led to her death. Each species present could experience the moment from multiple perspectives. The neural interface technologies developed by humanity allowed for a form of empathetic communication that transcended traditional linguistic barriers. They could feel the emotions, understand the context, experience the moment of conflict from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. The Galactic Collaborative Hub was not a place of governance in the traditional sense. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of communication and understanding. The technological systems humanity had developed were now used to create bridges between civilizations, to promote understanding, to prevent conflicts before they could begin. Representatives from species that had been at war for millennia found themselves engaged in genuine dialogue. The adaptive communication systems could identify potential points of conflict, suggest alternative perspectives, and create frameworks for mutual understanding. "We are not here to rule," Jack Rodriguez declared to the assembled representatives. "We are here to learn, to grow, to understand." The memorial continued to shift, showing Emily's life, her hopes, her dreams. It was a constant reminder of the human approach to conflict, not as something to be won, but as an opportunity for growth and understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez unveiled the final component of the new collaborative system. It was a comprehensive adaptive governance framework that could modify itself based on the needs of different species, while maintaining core principles of individual rights, transparent communication, and mutual respect. The technological systems that had once been weapons of transformation were now tools of communication and understanding. They could analyze potential diplomatic conflicts, suggest alternative approaches, and create frameworks for genuine cooperation. Karen Williams watched as the first truly collaborative diplomatic session began. The communication network she had developed could translate not just words, but intentions, emotions, cultural contexts. It was a form of communication that went beyond language, a true bridge between civilizations. Emily Rodriguez's memorial continued to shift and change, a living testament to the potential of genuine understanding. The galaxy would never be the same.